Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. I'm your host, James Anderson, and we've got a great episode for you today. We're going to be talking Red Sox with Bob Osgood and Jake Devereaux. But first, I just want to let everyone know the RotoWire Dynasty rankings are fully updated as of about 10 minutes ago. And if you want to use code YouTube15, you'll get 15% off your RotoWire subscription to check out those Dynasty rankings. Lots of interesting Red Sox risers, mostly. An interesting Red Sox faller that we'll get to a bit later. But first, I just want to say thanks for joining me, guys. Really appreciate you coming back on the show to talk some Red Sox.
Yeah, James, thanks for having us on. This is great. Always a pleasure to be on here.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been an interesting season for the Sox, and the reason I wanted to have you guys on, the initial reason is on my last Top 400 prospect rankings update, the only team with more players on the Top 400 was the Milwaukee Brewers. So the Red Sox, even with graduating Marcelo Mayer and Roman Anthony, still a ton of depth there. But I want to start just kind of getting your guys' sense of, how do you guys feel about the sort of short-term future of the Sox? Let's say like the rest of this year, next year, and just generally the direction of the club, after the Rafael Devers trade, and just what you've been seeing from the team's young core so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I think kind of for this season, it was a team that basically was entering year one of their contention window. I think ownership really a year ago started to allude to the big three, which at the time was Roman Anthony, Marcelo Mayer, and Kyle Teal. Kind of replace Kyle Teal with Kristian Campbell at this point. It's hard to anticipate all three of those guys hitting the ground running in year one, which they haven't. They've had a variety of different outcomes that I'm sure we'll get to later on in the show. But, once they went out and acquired Alex Bregman, Garrett Crochet, or Aldis Chapman, I think they really kind of, were investing in this team. And it ended up being Ceddanne Rafaela and Carlos Narvaez, who are part of that young core that emerged this year. I mean, Narvaez has a 3.1 B-WAR, which is only behind Nick Kurtz in the entire league so far. I know a lot of that is a defensive aspect of it, but, the way that Rafaela stepped up the last 2 months, along with Narvaez, and then obviously Abreu and Duran, you could still consider part of that young core. So, I mean, I think for their starting nine, especially once, when Mayer returns from injury, and I think next year he'll get more at bats. Campbell's getting right down to AAA. I mean, it's a pretty bright future from a hitting perspective. And then you've got the veteran presence, and, Trevor Story's still there as well, who has played a lot better in recent weeks. So, for me, the part that kind of gives me pause is just how flawed their younger players have been with fundamentals when they get called up. If you watch this team on a daily basis, the defense and the sloppy base running and things like that is concerning. And so, with the American League, which is just so wide open this year, it seems like this is a team that they should invest in at the trade deadline and kind of continue to add, just because, the American League is there for the taking. But I just, like I said, the defense and the base running, I think kind of caps their ceiling a little bit. And I'm not quite sure outside of Crochet if they have enough pitching.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Bob said there, especially with that young core that's coming along. I would also add that, my take on this Devers trade in the future is just that I really enjoyed seeing the Devers trade. I know I was in the minority there. I appreciate the conviction that Breslow had in moving on from Devers. As it's been widely reported, he wasn't really acting like a team player, becoming a little bit of a problem, setting a poor example for a lot of their younger players that have really bright futures. And Bob talked a lot about those guys, but I mean, they're impressionable right now. And I believe that he was in the start of his decline phase as well. So I think that contract was going to start to look pretty poorly. When they were contemplating which of these guys to sign between Mookie, Xander, and Devers, I always thought Devers would be the worst of the three to sign because of his body and the fact that he would age poorly. Doesn't really have a defensive home. So I think the team was really smart to pivot and get out of that trade. And I think we've seen the results since they traded him. The team's really kind of taken off. We've seen the results on the field. So the big caveat for me is whether or not the Red Sox will continue to act like the Red Sox. We haven't seen a whole lot of that in the last few years of them actually going out and flexing their financial muscle. But we did see that this year, with the signing of Chapman and the trade for Crochet, the signing of Alex Bregman. All of those worked out to an incredible degree. So hopefully they will reinvest that money in the team. But I guess that's the thing that I'm most concerned about.
Yeah, I thought, I was with you, Jake. I definitely understood the Devers trade. I think that contract is going to be a bad contract. It's just a matter of like when everyone agrees that it's officially a bad contract, but it's not going to stay above water for much longer if it still is. So I definitely understood that for the reasons you laid out. And that will be interesting though, right? Like you definitely don't want them to just really lean on their, drafting and developing and just kind of put the pocketbook away. But like you said, before the season, they did spend money. So what do you guys think they should do before tomorrow's trade deadline, if anything?
I guess I'll go first on this one. I really think that they should just go out and get a starting pitcher. They just really need another starter. I think they have the assets here to go out and get, if not a frontline guy, a number 2 type pitcher. And I know that the market's kind of crazy right now. But as Bob said, I mean, the American League is open right now. It's wide open. They're only 5 games back of the Blue Jays at this point, too, for first place in the division. So, you look at the league and it's like the Red Sox, if they make a big move, could actually come out of this league and represent in the World Series. So I would go hard after a Joe Ryan type guy. I think that would pay huge dividends for them, and they would not have to invest as heavily in the off season, and they can kind of do moves around the margins, like correcting first base. So pitcher would be the best thing. If they can't go out and get a Joe Ryan type, I would get a Merrill Kelly type and see if you can ride that into the postseason. He's had a lot of success in the postseason. He's a rental, so I think that'd be a great option.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I agree with the pitching. I do think, first on my list is a power hitting first baseman. We forget about how long Triston Casas has been out for now, but that was someone that, they expected to get 30 home runs from this year. And then you trade Rafael Devers in addition to that. Now, Jake and I were on different sides in terms of when that trade happened. But I just think they really need to replace that in the lineup. As much as the, Roman Anthony has emerged recently, I still think that there is a power hitter that they could use, whether that's Ryan O'Hearn or Yandy Diaz. Those are both players that are in the division, which makes it difficult to envision a trade. But who knows what the hell Tampa's going to do? They could go in any direction. And I think Baltimore is kind of in full sell. So, Josh Naylor was my number 1 name, but now that he's gone, I think O'Hearn and Diaz would be great names for them. But I agree with Merrill Kelly. I think Joe Ryan is probably, it's going to take a ton and might be unrealistic, but I think Kelly would be a great, if they could add a bat and an arm. And if it's not a starting pitcher, maybe they pivot to a reliever, Griffin Jacks or Carlos Estevez. I think getting another arm at the beginning or the end of the game would really help them out.
Jake, how many guys would be off limits for you in a Joe Ryan deal?
In the current system, who still qualify as prospects, I would say none.
Okay. What about
Really?
Actually, no. We'll get to that later. But yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Joe Ryan would really shift the balance of power, and he's under club control for beyond just this rest of this season. So that would be fascinating. And I mean, it's no longer a loaded at the top system, but it's an extremely deep system, so they could get that done. It would just be a pretty big package. And honestly, I want to jump right in and kind of look you talked about how they need another starter this year, but I just look at their internal rotation depth, looking at the minors, looking at guys who have made, a handful of starts in the big leagues, and we're just not quite sure exactly what they are yet. And I want to kind of look at that 2026 rotation with you guys and try to get a sense of who we actually think is going to break camp in that rotation next year. So for the sake of this, let's assume they don't add Joe Ryan, although that would be a big-time move. So obviously Garrett Crochet locked in, opening day starter next year. Brayan Bello has really come on strong the last couple months, so I think we can lock him into that rotation as well. Do you guys, Jake, you want to touch on Crochet quickly and just sort of what it's been like to have just a surefire ace, like a no doubt top 3 starter in the game, heading up that rotation?
Yeah, it's been amazing. We had Sale days for a long time before Chris Sale was traded and before all the injuries. And, this is just as good as having Chris Sale. It reminds you of Pedro appointment viewing, maybe not quite to that level, but we're seeing an incredible season from him. And, most of all, I think everybody was worried about the workload concerns because he's getting darn close to where he was last year. He finished last year at 146 innings pitched. Right now, he's at 141 and a third. He shows absolutely no signs of slowing down here. They're letting him go. His ERA has improved by over a run, 2.23. And he's showing that he's a true pitcher. This last year, he dominated with his fastball. It was his most valuable pitch by far, one of the best pitches in baseball. The fastball's down about a mile an hour, but his secondaries have been incredible, and they've been carrying him this entire year. So it's really been awesome to see him become a complete pitcher and just have confidence in everything he's throwing. And from what it sounds like, the Red Sox are not going to put any limitations on him. So, he wouldn't have been my pick to lead the league in innings pitched and strikeouts. I did pick him for Cy Young, but I didn't think he was going to do it that way. And it seems like he very well might lead in all those categories.
Yeah, definitely didn't see Garrett Crochet having a chance to lead the league in innings this year. But wow, he's just been amazing. And again, those dynasty rankings are fully updated on RotoWire, YouTube 15 to get 15% off if you want to check those out. And it is just incredibly stark on my dynasty rankings. Like you have Tariq Skubal, you have Paul Skeens, and you have Garrett Crochet, and then there's just a gigantic cliff to me to like whoever you think the next best starting pitcher is in dynasty, and Crochet certainly one of those top 3 guys. Bob, what have you seen from Bello over the last couple months? I mean, he's a guy that was just an absolute rotation or a ratio killer earlier in the year, especially with the whip. But he's really kind of come on strong here.
Yeah, I mean, if you asked this question back in May, I don't think that we would have put him as a lock outside of the fact that they, bought out a couple of years and signed him through 2029. But it's at $9 million a year, so they have him on a pretty friendly deal now that you see what he's done in the last 2 months. And it's really kind of been some ups and downs over the years with Bello, but he's been a totally different pitcher since the end of May. He pitched into the sixth inning in all 9 of his starts since that time, not including a relief appearance that he had. Cora's been willing to let him go deep into starts. He threw a complete game against Colorado, which granted the 3 of us probably could do, but in those 9 starts, he's had 5 of those that are 103 pitches or more. He's let him go up to 114 in one of those games. And I feel like early in the season, you could kind of see him after every start talking to him in the dugout. He kind of rides him pretty hard because I think he knows, what the talent level is when he puts that all together. And just seeing that over the last 2 months has been great. Just like I said, pitching deep into games, always going into 6-7 innings. And his fastball velocity just stays with him into those 6th, 7th innings. He's been throwing 95 miles an hour, like almost exactly in every start the whole season. He's used the cutter more the last 2 months, decreasing his slider and changeup a little bit. And he also stopped going out of the windup. He's just pitching out of the stretch exclusively. And all of that coincided with that, beginning of June timeframe. So it seems like they made some tweaks and, just eye test wise, he's got so much more confidence and having more fun on the mound.
Yeah, it's he's really rounded into form. There were I may or may not have probably given some bad advice on him around that May point you were talking about in terms.
I dropped him. I dropped him.
But yeah, for Red Sox purposes, great to see him coming on strong here. So we covered Garrett Crochet, Brayan Bello. I think we can safely say they'll be in next year's opening day rotation, barring some sort of injury. And we're going to talk about the candidates for those final 3 spots in that rotation here in a second. But first, I want to send it to a message from our sponsors. The NFFC RotoWire Fantasy Football Online Championship is live. Play fantasy football against your favorite RotoWire experts on NFFC this football season. Jeff Erickson, Nick Whalen, and more will compete in the RotoWire NFFC Online Championship for a shot at $250K. Sign up for a draft today at rotowire.com/high stakes. That's rotowire.com/high stakes. All right, back on the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. I've got Bob Osgood and Jake Devereaux. We're talking Red Sox, and we're specifically talking who's going to be in the Red Sox 2026 rotation. I just think that's an interesting thing to kind of look ahead at, because there are a lot of guys that I would like to potentially take flyers on in this system that could be in that rotation. We talked about Garrett Crochet. We talked about Brayan Bello. They're in it. And then if anyone missed it, the RotoWire Dynasty rankings are fully updated. YouTube 15 if you want to get 15% off and check those out. But that brings us to our next candidate here, Jake. And Lucas Giolito, he's kind of been up and down. He had a stretch where he was just a fantasy lifesaver there. But he's got an interesting aspect of his contract where it's a $14 million club option if he fails to reach 140 innings this year. And if you kind of look at where he's at right now and just the projection systems, it looks like it's going to be fairly close. Like if he just stays fully healthy, he can make a run at 140 innings, but he might come up short. How do you see that playing out, Jake? And do you have, would it be best case scenario if he just comes up a little short there and they opt him in for one more year at 14 million?
I definitely think that would be the best case scenario for the team. The way that Lucas Giolito has pitched over the last month or so has been actually a little bit more than a month now. It's been pretty incredible. Over his last 9 starts, he's 6-1 with a 2.17 ERA. We saw why last night. He had 6 strong innings against the Twins. The changeup was absolutely electric for him. He just looks so much more comfortable since they made some mechanical tweaks. He's a little bit more over the top now. His fastball is playing up. The changeup is as deadly as it's ever been right now. So I think definitely best case scenario would be for him to be a little bit short. However, I don't think there's going to be any funny business to limit him. So if he does get to 140, which I expect he probably will if he stays healthy, there are some other interesting things in there. There's a $19 million mutual option that I suspect Giolito would decline. And then the Red Sox can also give him the qualifying offer, which I would think they would do, especially if he continues to pitch like this. We've seen what healthy Giolito looks like. I know he had a rough 3 years before he ended up having the surgery on his arm. But, the 3 years prior to that, he was one of the better pitchers in baseball. So I think that's the type of guy that is currently on the mound for the Red Sox. And if you can have that be your third starter, that's a real luxury to me.
Does it seem like things are good between Giolito and the team right now? Do you think it's a potential thing where maybe he even comes back on a different deal if he goes over 140, or do you think he would just be going to the highest bidder at that point?
I kind of get the sense he likes being here. He likes the team and likes the guys. So I think the relationship's pretty good there. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he feels like he kind of owes them a little bit of a solid too to, negotiate in good faith and try and get something done, maybe a 2-3 year extension.
He kind of alluded to that too, that, he didn't really earn his money last year while he was out, and said that at the beginning of this year as well, because he got hurt on the first pitch of spring training. So, I think he, as Jake said, feels like he owes them a little bit in terms of signing that 2-year deal, and I'm really only getting about 4 months from him.
Yeah, so I definitely agree. Like if he goes over the 140 and he's pitched well, qualifying offer seems like an obvious call. So yeah, that one's going to be interesting. That might come down to, end of the season, off season. We'll see if Lucas Giolito is a member of the Red Sox rotation next year. But even if he is, that still leaves 2 spots, and there are just a ton of options. I don't know. I'm sure you guys probably have differing opinions about like how real you think some of these options are, but you got Richard Fitz, you got Kutter Crawford, who's going to be coming back from wrist surgery. You got Cooper Criswell, Hunter Dobbins coming back from knee surgery. Patrick Sandoval is rehabbing from his internal brace, but that kind of stalled. You got Kyle Harrison, who you picked up from the Giants. Tanner Houck, who has sabotaged some of my fantasy teams this season and is currently dealing with an elbow injury. And if I had to guess, I would say that's trending towards Tommy John surgery. And then you got like Josh Winkowski, if you want to go all the way down the depth chart to him, also dealing with an elbow injury, might just be a long reliever. But Jake, do you want to talk about one of those guys maybe who stands out to you in a positive way?
Yeah, I think the Hunter Dobbins story has been one of my favorite surprises of this year. Just a guy who gets out there, throws a lot of different pitches, competes, isn't afraid to go after hitters. Him going down with the ACL on that jump play at first base to catch the ball there was really disappointing because he's been definitely one of the bright spots. I'm a little bit doubtful that he's going to be fully ready to rock at the beginning of the season next year. It's possible that he is. And if he is, that's fantastic because I think he's kind of a perfect 4 or 5 starter. So he's been a huge positive development for this team. And I've loved everything that I've seen from him. Just a great attitude. I don't know if you recall his comments when he was playing the Yankees. He made a lot of noise there with what he said about never wanting to play for that team. So that immediately endeared him to Red Sox fans as well.
Yeah, he has been a great story, and that was a very untimely injury, especially just for him personally, with a chance to kind of take a rotation spot and run with it. So that's good to hear, though, that you like Dobbins enough to bring him up first here. Bob, what about you? Do you got a favorite of these guys?
I wouldn't say a favorite, but I would say that, Patrick Sandoval just seems like a lock to me. I would even put him into that category because they gave him a 2-year, $18 million deal, with the majority of that being next season, owing him about $13 million. It's not a deal that I was really in favor of. I'm kind of tired of them doing these reclamation projects. You've got James Paxton and Michael Fulmer and Liam Hendricks and Patrick Sandoval. So they're kind of 0 for 4 now because they were expecting Sandoval to contribute in the second half of the season, and he's had a setback. So I would advise them to stop doing that. But at the same time, I would imagine that 2 years off of Tommy John, that he will be part of the rotation next season. It's a guy who had a 2.91 ERA in 2022, and then kind of probably started to have injury issues in 2023 with a 4.11 where he had almost 5 walks per 9. So I just think that Sandoval is probably, going to be in that mix going into next season, whether I agree with it or not.
Yeah, I didn't like that deal either. I think Sandoval might be one of those guys who's just a better real life pitcher than a fantasy pitcher, just because I think he's got like a career 1.38 whip or something like that, 1.37 whip. So that part makes it tough in fantasy, but he has had success preventing runs as a starter back when he was playing for the Angels. I wonder, like, he would have to just be really bad in the spring to not get that job, essentially, is what you're saying. Because part of me thinks if they have enough of these guys healthy, if they have a prospect or two healthy, there might just be a situation where Sandoval looks like the 7th or 8th best starter in the spring.
Like Walker Buehler this year,
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm not interested in him. Even if he is in the rotation. So I guess I'm sort of hoping that someone else can beat him out. But do you think they would just kind of at least give him like a month or two, barring him just being a complete disaster in the spring?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I'm thinking. That'll kind of be locked in to start. And then, we're going to talk about Payton Tolle in a little bit, but those are the types of arms and other prospects that seem to be within a year in their ETA that could just kind of force the issue.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about Tolle here in a second. Jake, what do you think? Obviously it depends. He might have surgery or depends how this elbow injury kind of unfolds with Tanner Houck. But where do you sort of see his career going from here?
He's really at a crossroads. It's unfortunate this happened to him this year because we saw a bit of a breakout last year, especially in the first half. Four-seam fastball that he had, it's a pretty good pitch. It's not elite, but the slider that he paired with it and the third pitch that he was using, the splitter, that all kind of came together finally for him. And this year, he's just been very hittable with the fastball. People are laying off the slider and a lot of hard contact being made against him. So he really was one of the worst pitchers in all of baseball and really didn't look too much better when he was doing his rehab outings. So I think getting his health right is the first thing that he needs to do. I don't expect anything from him this year or next year, and I would be pretty surprised if there wasn't some sort of surgery between now and the beginning of next year just to get his career back on track, because he definitely sees himself as a starter. And after last year, I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, it seems like maybe a change of scenery, like get the surgery, come back with like a second division team or something and try to reestablish himself that way.
Yeah.
Bob, what have you made of Kyle Harrison since he joined the organization? I know people that aren't like that in tune with what's happening, like we're talking about him as like a big addition in that trade, but I think the Giants weren't that sorry to see him go necessarily. But like, what have you seen from him since acquiring Kyle Harrison?
Yeah, I mean, in regards to the Devers trade, I think that most of us kind of see that as a salary dump, a bit of a reset that they tried to use. That Jordan Hicks has come in as an eighth inning guy and they got Kyle Harrison back, but Hicks has been doing Jordan Hicks things, which is looking electric in some outings, but unable to find the strike zone in others. So I don't think that, he's going to be a sleeper closer or anything like that. He just doesn't have enough command there. And then with Harrison, he's at a 12% walk rate in his 6 starts since he's gone to AAA. So I think that for him, that's more of a 2026 project. I don't think you'll see him this year. They were adding in a cutter. They were trying to change his pitch mix, but he just hasn't been effective yet since he's gone to AAA. He's had 1 or 2 decent starts recently, but just not much consistency. And he just seems like more of a depth piece where, if it hits and they figure something out, then great. But I don't think that trade was, to expect him to be a permanent fixture in the rotation long term.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the blooms come off of the rose with Harrison, but I am interested, I guess, at least early in spring training next year. I'll at least want to be sort of monitoring his starts and sort of seeing how the offseason adjustments have taken. And the big thing with Harrison to me has always just been a combination of his fastball velocity and his fastball command, and he needs to have both of them humming. Like the fastball's got to be pushing 95, I think, for him to have success, and he's got to be locating it. But if he's doing that in the spring and then incorporating these other offerings he's been working on, that could become interesting. But I guess like for now, not that interesting. Any of these other guys you guys want to talk about before we talk about Payton Tolle?
I'll just stump for Kutter Crawford here real quick. Just a really impressive guy before the knee injury and then the unfortunate wrist injury. Pitched a whole ton of innings for this team last year. His development story kind of reminds me a little bit of Hunter Dobbins's, in that he was a guy who maybe wasn't expected to be much of anything but a back end starter, and at times pitched like a number 3 last year. So I don't think his story is written in Boston yet, and I'm really hoping that he can be one of those guys that gets fully healthy after these 2 issues. He's got a very unique fastball Just like Harrison does, it seems like the Red Sox are targeting guys with a unique fastball. Payton Tolle, as we're going to talk about in a second, is another guy with a unique fastball. So it seems like, one of those guys that has the traits that this team is looking for. And I think he's a good player. So I'm excited to see him get it back on track.
Yeah, and if you look at the updated Steamer 2025 projections and you sort Red Sox starting pitchers by K- walk rate, Garrett Crochet, obviously, first. Steamer has him for 24% K- walk. But then we got a two-way tie for second between Kutter Crawford at a 14.9 K- walk projection from Steamer and Payton Tolle, 14.9% K- walk. So Steamer thinks that just by K- walk, Payton Tolle and Kutter Crawford are for second and third in terms of Red Sox starting pitchers. Payton Tolle, my number 2 left-handed pitching prospect on the last update, and I moved him up from where he was on that update even higher on today's updated dynasty rankings, which again, Roto or YouTube 15 if you want 15% off those updated RotoWire dynasty rankings. But Payton Tolle, he's just been absolutely dominant in the minors this year. Hasn't really skipped a beat at all since getting to AA, and I love his swagger too, and just the way he carries himself on the mound. He carries himself like a frontline starter. Like I think that's something that's in play with this guy.
He's got that stash too.
Yeah, he totally looks just like a guy you don't want to mess with out there. And so far at AA, like I said, he's got a 1.96 ERA. 31 strikeouts, 5 walks in 23 innings, 0.74 whip. So basically just as dominant as he was at high A. Payton Tolle, 6'6", 250-pound lefty, monster fastball, and really good command. Just given how electric his arsenal is. I think if things kind of trend the way they're trending and Tolle stays healthy, I think he's going to be a guy that I don't know if he's going to make the rotation, but I think he's going to potentially be the talk of Red Sox spring training, at least the first couple of weeks, because he just seems like a guy who's going to be ready early next year. I don't know if either of you guys have any thoughts on Tolle.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Bob. Yeah,
I can start. I mean, I think just as a left-handed hitter, I mean, between the 3/4 arm angle and the way that he starts on the first base side of the rubber, I mean, that would just be it's not an easy assignment. And his 91-mile-an-hour fastball coming out of college, which you could just tell, they must be able to work with that a little bit. Now he's averaging 95. He's throwing closer to 97, 98, and reportedly that holds later in the game. Plus he has great extension. So it's like, in terms of, if you're looking at a model, I feel like he has all of that. And as you mentioned, pretty imposing on the mound, with his size as well. And then it just seems like his secondaries have improved as well. He really had that one great pitch coming out of college. But it sounds like the slider has improved this year. It's missing more bats. So as a left-hander throwing at that angle, if he can have great fastball and a good slider, I mean, that's rare, even without a great third pitch. So I agree with you. I mean, I am probably a little bit biased, but I'm looking at him a couple of years from now and thinking that he has number 2 upside.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there, Bob. And I think this organization's been in love with the cutter as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see his slider turn into more of a cutter in the future, or at least add that to his repertoire. He's just really impressive guy. And, we had Ian Kundal on our podcast from Sox Prospects, and, he was already saying that a lot of the numbers support him being moved up to AAA already, because he's kind of dominating AA. So, and he's second in the organization in terms of extension right now that he gets. So, couple that with everything you guys said, it's a really special arm and a great development story for the Red Sox.
And I was just gonna say, I don't know if it's crazy. He's only at 72 innings. I mean, could he be a 1 or a 2 inning September call up or bullpen arm this year if he pitched better at AA than he did at high A? If he hits the ground running at AAA, I don't think that's, completely out of bounds.
Yeah, I think we gotta start thinking about this guy as just one of the absolute best pitching prospects in the game, and those guys move just faster than your typical pitching prospect per level, right? Like you look at you don't keep a Chase Burns or a Paul Skeens at AAA
right.
the full season, right? Like you get them up to the big leagues as soon as they're ready. I don't know. Like, how do you envision this team sort of handling this type of prized pitching prospect who's nearing that big league debut? Like, do you think it's potential? Like, I love the idea of potentially using him as a reliever. Do you think that he could even be up, maybe even as a starter? Like, do you think that they would give him a chance to win a job next year in spring training? Like, how do you sort of see this team handling such a prize prospect?
I mean, I think that's all in play. You don't want to waste bullets with a guy like this, mowing down AAA hitters. I don't think AAA is the challenge that it once was, or, maybe none of the levels are what they once were with the way that the minors have been rearranged. But, the Red Sox have found the prices to be a little bit prohibitive for going out and looking for a starting pitcher. So if they feel comfortable moving Tolle up to that spot right now, wouldn't surprise me to see him starting a few games in August. And we've seen them skip AAA altogether with players in the past that they've thought are ready to go.
And I think for my selfish purposes, I don't want Tolle to pitch in the big leagues at all this year. I want him to be an affordable draft and hold target all offseason. Potentially one who's a little under the radar until we get to February, March. But that won't be the case if he gets up to the big leagues this year. But it's not just Payton Tolle in this system. I mean, it's become an absolute pitching prospect factory. It's not quite as, prime for like the Seattle and Milwaukee pitching pipelines just because of the way Fenway plays. But they clearly know what they're doing in terms of targeting pitchers and developing pitchers. And Connelly Early and David Sandlin both just got promoted to AAA after having really impressive runs at AA. And Early is a guy that I just, it's dangerous when you have a lefty with just a dominant changeup. You never know quite how it's going to play at the highest level, but I think Early's fastball is good enough. I think the way he tunnels the fastball and the changeup, it allows both pitches to play way up. The command, I think, is good enough, and just another lefty starter waiting in the wings. And then Sandlin, kind of the opposite. He's a righty with a bigger fastball. Not quite the same track record as Early, but I think Sandlin dealt with a lot of bad luck, especially last year on balls in play and stuff. So I think the fact that they both just got promoted to AAA, they need to be discussed in this conversation for next year, because I do think they will at least be kind of in that mix in the spring. We'll see how they do at AAA. Obviously, that'll play a part in how viable they are as true candidates to make the rotation next year. But Bob, what do you make of Connelly Early so far this season, and how he kind of fits into this rotation long term?
Yeah, I mean, I like that we've seen the velocity bump a little bit, and that's not that he's throwing in the high 90s. I love when these guys are throwing around 94. I feel like that's a good range to maybe avoid an arm surgery. But yeah, his best pitch is the changeup, but his velocity has jumped, sitting 92 to 94 range most of the year. It just seems like he's missing more bats, and just like if you look at a starter profile, with like, love what I'm seeing with Sandlin, but he throws 100. So you worry about injury, you worry about bullpen, and there's a couple of others, like Valera and Clark, where, they just throw really hard. Early, you just hope that that's somebody who can stay healthy. And he just seems like he has the most, maybe not upside, but potential back of the rotation type of profile.
Yeah, I think so. And what the part about Sandlin throwing that hard, definitely something that I keep in the back of my mind too. And with him, at least, like it's such an easy fit if you have to move him to the bullpen. Like you don't even really have to think about how it would work.
Right.
Obviously, they're going to try to develop Sandlin as a starter. But Jake, what do you think about his chances of contributing in the rotation next year?
I think it's possible. I don't think it's probable. Sandlin is my pick for the first guy up out of this group, even with Tolle in consideration. I think Sandlin, there's a good chance that right after the trade deadline, he could be added to the major league club as a bridge to Chapman. You look at the stuff, it's an absolutely elite fastball and a really good slider. He could be deadly in the bullpen, and especially we've talked about how prohibitive the market's been price-wise, and you have one of these guys internally. I think David Sandlin is going to be better long-term as a back end of the bullpen guy, who could even close at some point. I know we're going to be talking about that a little bit down the road here, who could potentially close later, but he has that type of stuff. And I'm not sure he's got the starters repertoire. So, big Sandlin fan, but I would have him on your radar in all leagues to add within the next few weeks.
Very good. I like that call. Okay, so we've covered, I think, all the sort of the most realistic options for the rotation next year. So, Bob, what are you projecting? And then we'll go to Jake. But who do you have as your 5 Red Sox starters for next year?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Crochet at 1. I'm going to put Bello at 2. I think Giolito, if he doesn't reach the 140 innings, they'd love to have him back at the $14 million amount. I think as you get to 19 to 21 million, I just don't know if they'll go for that, just because I think that there are some better options. If Giolito doesn't want to take a qualifying offer, wants a longer term deal, I don't know that they would want to sign up for that, just with how inconsistent he's been in recent years. So that's kind of like the, fork in the road, the number 3, like they'd want him at the cheaper amount. If not, I think they'd probably do like a 1 or a 2 year stopgap option. I think of what they did with Buehler, like Zach Gallen would be the the guy that's under that category that I could just see them throwing a 1 or a 2 year deal at, like, oh, he's done it before. There's some upside there. They just don't want to go out and spend for a 4 or 5 or max free type of contract. So, perhaps that's a Sandy Alcantara trade at the deadline, someone that has 2 years remaining. Like, I could see them trading from their pitching depth for something like that. So that's kind of my SP3 is an unknown. SP4, I have Sandoval. And then 5th, I mean, like, you think of all the names that we talked about here, and even assuming if Houck has surgery, you've got Hunter Dobbins, Payton Tolle, Kutter Crawford, Kyle Harrison, Richard Fitz, Connelly Early. Like, I just feel like that's going to be a battle in spring training for that spot. I think eventually, like, Tolle will have that job for the majority of the year. But I think they'll kind of slot that as whoever wins the job. I think Dobbins is a good guess, but if Harrison makes some adjustments or Kutter Crawford comes back healthy, they could take that as well. So, I'll say Tolle, just because I think he'll get the most starts in that spot next year.
Jake, how does yours differ at all?
Only that I have a little bit more conviction in Lucas Giolito. I think what he's shown over the last couple of months here is enough for the team to throw that qualifying offer at him and work on something more long-term. So my faith in him is a little bit higher than Bob's. But I think that 5th spot battle is going to be really interesting because, like you said, Tolle's the hot thing right here. He's healthy. And Kutter Crawford, if he's healthy, and Hunter Dobbins, if he's healthy, those guys are going to want that spot really bad and have definitely earned it in the past. So a lot of options for this team. It's just a weird position to be in, to see the Red Sox having a plethora of internal pitching options that are actually really good. So it also kind of adds fuel to the fire of maybe the Red Sox can afford to trade a couple of these guys for Joe Ryan in a trade. Just trying to will that into existence. Sorry.
I was on. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking that when we were talking about Sandlin and Early, like, I mean, maybe they'd both be in it, but
Sure.
they could definitely trade from, especially these guys that we sort of think of as like number 4, number 5s, because like a lot of teams don't just have a bunch of these guys waiting there to compete for a spot in the spring. So, maybe Richard Fitz has more value to another team. Kutter Crawford, I think what you guys are saying about Sandoval sort of being locked in makes sense. I'd prefer Kutter Crawford to be the guy in that sort of 4 spot, and then Tolle as sort of the exciting wild card for that 5th spot there. But should be really exciting. I agree about Juan Valera and Brandon Clark as potential reliever options long term. Clark was barely in the top 200 on my last update. I think just the way he's pitching at high A right now is definitely kind of pointing in that direction. But they've also got Kyson Witherspoon, who they just drafted in the 1st round, who I absolutely love. Think he could be a number 2 starter in his own right in time. And then Luis Perales, who was kind of the it guy last year before he got hurt. He's someone that's got big time upside as well. Jake, what did you think of the Red Sox draft? And then what are your expectations for Witherspoon and Perales heading into next year?
I'll start with the draft. I loved the Red Sox draft. This is the 3rd year in a row that a guy who was projected to go before the Red Sox pick fell to them. So I wasn't even considering that Kyson Witherspoon would be there. So when they were able to pick him, I was really excited about that. He's just a power pitcher with the body of somebody who you could see being really like a frontline to mid-rotation guy. But with Luis Perales, he's a guy who's recovering from Tommy John right now. Probably before the Tommy John, he was easily the top pitching prospect in the system. I think fully healthy, it actually is pretty close between Perales and Payton Tolle in terms of who's really the best guy. Because with Perales, he's got 3 pitches. He's also a guy with a plus fastball. He's a guy with a great slider and a splitter that can get a lot of outs. So I really think that he's going to be in that rotation mix, Luis Perales, in 2027. I think both Perales and Tolle will be in that rotation. Kyson, I think, is going to take a little bit more time. He could make a debut late in 2027, but I don't think that he's going to be somebody that they rush along. We've seen even that with these, big time SEC pitchers, that sometimes they take a little bit longer to adjust to the pro game. And who knows what type of tweaks the Red Sox are going to want to make to his repertoire and, the shape of his pitches. So I think it's going to take a little bit more time, but the pitching pipeline was a huge focus of this draft. Yet again, 16 out of the 21 players that they drafted were pitchers. And it's clear that they're going with a volume approach here and really just selecting traits in guys that they think they can develop.
Yeah, it seems like they know that pitching is something they're good at. And so, why not lean into that, especially in the draft, and go after those college arms like they did. Marcus Phillips could even figure into this question, but Bob, you guys can both answer this, but I'll go to you first, Bob. Is the Red Sox 2026 closer on the roster currently? And Phillips not for 2026, but he could be a reliever long term.
Yeah, I think 2026, they're either going to do, I think Chapman has obviously been a good fit, so it could be a return there. Or maybe if they, like I mentioned, Carlos Estevez quite a bit, he has 1 year left. Griffin Jacks has 2 years left. If they don't trade for a starting pitcher, I think they should try to trade for a reliever, for somebody that has at least 1 year of control remaining. And then I feel like 2027 and beyond, it's going to be one of these high power arms that we're talking about. And I actually, as much as I like Luis Perales, I could see him in that role because, just kind of reading the reports before he got injured, his stuff fell off a little bit from the third inning and beyond. So I think just someone that throws in the high 90s like that, he could be in that mix, as well as, some of these other ones we're talking about. They just have so many kind of hard throwing arms. And like, a year ago, they had 14 pitchers and 6 position players in the draft. This year, they had 15 out of 21. It's like they're going with quantity. And I think a couple will flame out and a couple others will get hurt, but they clearly have a model of just like, hard throwing right-handed pitchers that they have there. I guess a couple of them are left-handed as well. And you would think that whether that's 2027, 2028, that the future closer would come out of that group from homegrown type of thing. And like, I think the reason that, they're not going to admit this, but the 29 pitchers they've drafted in the last 2 years, they're so set. As much as you want to have a balance in the minor leagues, like their position players are all controlled through 2029, 2030. I feel like this is an opportunity for them to try to skew more towards pitching in the draft and, try to develop a rotation and a closer and whatever else.
What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I would say in addition to a few of the names we've talked about, like Marcus Phillips, I just want to add in Anthony Ayenson from LSU, right-handed pitcher, signed for about $800,000 over slot, that third-round pick. So I think he could be in the mix as well eventually. But the guy I think that's most logical right now is Garrett Whitlock, who we've really seen just settle right back into the bullpen. He actually leads the team in innings pitched in the bullpen right now. Came in last night. They've been limiting him to an inning now rather than 2 innings like they were earlier in the season, and the stuff has been elite. He's been really striking out a ton of guys there. So I think he's the most logical internal candidate to fill that role. But I think Aroldis Chapman has just been such a great fit, and the comfort that he's shown being here and the fact that he's just been one of the better closers in all of baseball yet again. I would definitely try and give him another couple of years to stay here.
Yeah, they have so much arm talent that you would definitely think that by 2027, 2028, one of these guys is just a dominant closer who doesn't end up making it as a starter. But yeah, the Chapman marriage has been fantastic. He cut his walk rate in half with you guys.
Been awesome.
I don't think any of us saw that part coming.
Yeah, really incredible. Yeah. Now, Bob, what is your level of concern now with Kristian Campbell, who you mentioned in passing earlier? Obviously, just had a red hot start to the year, and then just kind of just stopped hitting and then got sent down, and I still haven't seen him back. But what do you think about Kristian Campbell long term, and how high are you still on him?
Yeah, I think long term I'm still high on Campbell. I understand why they sent him down. I think it was probably a good move to give him a reset. They really they asked a lot of him in terms of his bat was there, or at least they thought that it was there, but his second base was not up to par at a major league level. And then they were mixing him in the outfield during that time. And then when Devers was traded, they were working him out at first base. And I think when you're trying to figure out how to hit major league pitching and your second base glove isn't there yet, and then you're being asked to play the outfield and first base, it was just way too much. Since he's gone back to the minors, they've had him play first base in like 16, I think, of those games. He slumped for the first couple of weeks, but he's 15 for 35 over the last 9 games with 3 home runs. If you go back to July 3rd, he's hitting 295 with a 130 WRC plus, which, he should be doing in the minor leagues. But I think that he's probably he's starting to find his bat again. He's pulling the ball more in recent weeks down at AAA. So my guess is that we'll see him again this year. But I do wonder, with how much he's playing at first base. Abraham Toro was a good fill-in early in the season. If they don't make a trade, you could see Campbell take that spot and they move on from Toro, because he really hasn't hit in close to 2 months now, that being Toro. And then a year from now, we're going to talk about Triston Casas, but he could be shifting to DH if he stays with the team. And you wonder if they see Campbell as a fit at first base in the long term. So I feel like it's kind of trending towards that, but it's good to see that his bat is come back in the last couple of weeks, because you don't want this to be a a Scott Kingery type of situation. And I think of guys like that a lot when they give an extension and it seems team friendly, but they are committing $60 million to him.
Yeah. That's actually come up on a couple recent pods I've done. Just those guys that get the early deals.
Was it Seattle guy? I always forget it.
Evan White. Yeah.
There you go.
It does sort of seem like it's kind of the guys who don't want to bet on themselves, maybe, like there's sometimes like a reason for that, but it's just tough to say like whether it's kind of a chicken or the egg type of thing with those long-term contracts and guys not living up to them. But it's so hard to hit big league pitching when you're also trying to work on your defense. It's not surprising it went that way, I guess.
Yeah.
Jake, what do we talked, or Bob just mentioned Triston Casas. Like, I drafted him again this year. I feel like there is this monster breakout season in there, and I want to have it on my fantasy teams when it happens, but are the injuries just mounting so much with Casas at this point that you're maybe worried enough about his availability that you're not sure he's a big part of the next great Red Sox team?
Yeah, I'm really concerned, honestly. And this is a guy I've been touting on this show for, I think, like the last 4 years. So I feel like my name is tied to Triston Casas' success a little bit. But yeah, I'm hugely concerned. The injuries have mounted. And I think the other concerning thing is just that he's been a little bit unpredictable in terms of his personality in the clubhouse. It's not clear at all that everybody likes him, and he has made some weird comments about in spring training about wanting the established veterans to be there, like he was an established veteran, and that was a little bit of a knock against some of the younger prospects who are now very much a major part of this team. I think that the team is internally going to be having a lot of discussions about moving him in this offseason as soon as they can prove that he is relatively healthy. He's still a very attractive player. He just strikes me as a real change of scenery guy who maybe got up a little bit too soon, maybe got a little bit too big for his britches in terms of where he thought his standing was in the clubhouse. He's a guy who I thought that might be a good match for a team like Minnesota, who doesn't have a clear option there. We know what Triston Casas' power is like. He can get one out in any park. He's still a really good player with a really attractive bat. It's just a matter of staying on the field and being a good teammate all the time. And sometimes that comes with monitoring the things that you say a little bit more than he seems to want to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's all fair. Bob, you want to add anything?
No, I mean, you go back to 2022, he had an ankle sprain in the minor leagues, and then he pulled out of the Dominican Winter League with a knee injury. 2023, he had shoulder inflammation, missed the end of the season. 2024, he had a rib cage injury, missed 98 games. And then now you're talking about a significant rehab with the patellar. And that's 5 injuries in 4 years. I think he's just a big body first baseman that I think is going to probably be a DH. Now, as Jake said, there's a lot of talent there and there's a place for him somewhere. Our show was in favor of, most of us were in favor of making a trade this offseason when we were debating Jarren Duran and Triston Casas and who they should move. And now, in terms of the value of those players, they're not really in the same category anymore. We had hoped they lined up for a trade for a Seattle pitcher. The Casas might have worked out there. Again, that ship has sailed at this point. So I think, whether they need to prove him to be healthy to line up for a trade, and if he's on this team, I think it's as a DH going forward.
Yeah, I haven't decided yet if I'll be drafting any Casas in 2020.
I mean, I feel like he's going to be cheap. Where would you think he goes, not knowing anything about the rehab and early drafts?
Maybe like 250, something like that.
Yeah.
I think you have to kind of treat him now like a Royce Lewis, Byron Buxton type of guy where you're banking, you're assuming he's going to miss a ton of time. So I think he's just kind of in that high upside, like very low floor group of guys that you could go after. But
that's fair.
Now, Marcelo Mayer is a guy that I've always kind of ranked as if he's going to be a better real life prospect than a fantasy prospect, just given the defense and just he's not going to run as much as your typical shortstop. Either you guys have like a good sense or a good feel for what his 2026 fantasy stats will look like, Marcelo Mayer?
Yeah, I've got a line for Marcelo. I think he's going to be 260, 320, 410, 17 home runs, 70 runs, 60 RBI, 10 stolen bases if he plays the full season. So that's not an overly impressive fantasy season.
That works though. I mean, I think he could have like a very similar career to like Dansby Swanson.
I can see that
would be a really, really productive career, right? Like,
yeah,
excellent shortstop defense and just an everyday player. So yeah, I mean, I can buy that. I mean, I'm interested in what his price is for next year too, because it is like the name values there. I'll be interested to see what the projection systems make of Mayer for next year. But what about Bob? What about Roman Anthony? I mean, this Roman Anthony, for those who just tuned in, the dynasty rankings are fully updated. YouTube 15 if you want 15% off those, but suffice to say that Roman Anthony is the highest ranked Red Sox hitter on those updated dynasty rankings. What do you think his stat line is going to look like next year, Bob?
Yeah, I was a little lower than Jake on Mayer, so I'll be I might be high on Anthony, but with Mayer, I just worry about him staying on the field. You talk about Swanson. That's somebody who's been out there 150, 160 games. Mayer's had a few injuries now, so I had him in more like 120 games. I went a little lower. With Anthony, 285 average, 380 OBP. I mean, his OBP is 400 right now, which is just insane. Walk rate of 14.6% so far this season, which would be 8th best in the whole league if he was qualified. It's next to Schwarber and Tucker at that. So 380 OBP, could even be light. I said 22 homers, 90 RBI, 10 stolen bases, and I put 105 runs because Cora's already said he's going to be hitting leadoff probably for the rest of the season, and I'd imagine that's where he is next year as well. So I think he's going to score a ton of runs with a 15% walk rate.
Yeah,
is that fair? Or
I mean, I think you showed some restraint there. I think. He's been so good. Just very rare for a prospect to come up and be kind of that in control of what he's doing. I'm another guy I'm interested to see where he goes in drafts next year. Like the speed part is going to be interesting. Bob, you said 10 steals for Anthony, and then you said what, 22 homers?
Yeah, 22 homers, 90 RBI, 285, 380. I probably should say 390 on the OBP, but I don't know. I was just looking at other names that have that OBP, and it seems extreme. So
yeah,
I'm just not ready to go there for a full year yet. But I don't know. He's been running a little bit. He seems like a good base runner, but doesn't have a ton of speed.
Yeah, I have a feeling that. Yeah, I mean the whether he's worth his draft cost next year will really come down to the homers and the steals, because he could have an awesome year and still hit like 18 homers and steal just 6 or 7 bases, but still have that sky high OBP, tons of runs. But he could also hit 30 homers next year. So it's going to be tough to kind of pinpoint what the power output looks like from Anthony in 2026. Get you guys out of here on this one. Jake, what do you Ceddanne Rafaela, I had tons of Ceddanne Rafaela in fantasy last year. I have 0 of him this year because I was just scared about how they're going to make all the pieces fit, and I really regret that, obviously. But is this kind of the best Ceddanne Rafaela is going to be, or is he still getting better just in terms of like the fantasy output people can expect?
Well, it's good that we're ending on this because I think Bob and I both share Ceddanne Rafaela as our favorite player on the team right now. The defense is just absolutely elite. I think this is about as good as the defense is going to get. That doesn't typically improve as you get into your later 20s, but I think it's going to be at this level for a long time. I continue to think that he's going to push his OBP up higher and higher by limiting that chase rate and just becoming a more patient hitter. We've already seen a ton of strides about that. I wrote about his development. Bob recently wrote about his development as well. And I think that the power is really surprising, and he could add even more home runs and doubles. So, and he's got the speed to throw in some triples too. He is just a really special player, so tooled up, and he made another, 15% catch probability catch in center field last night. It feels like it's his routine for him. So his idol is Andrew Jones, and hopefully he can live up to that type of defense, and maybe not as much with the home runs, but I think we'll see some 20-25 home run years from him.
Yeah, I mean, he's 14 for 17 on the bases this year too, compared to 19 for 29 a year ago, and he's been playing second base. So I feel like he's going to have that middle infield, outfield, combo eligibility that will help. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure about the OBP. Having it over 300 seems legendary compared to last year when he didn't walk for 7 weeks to end the season. But having the chase rate down is a huge difference. He was swinging so much at balls down and away, and they've had to stop throwing that pitch to him because he's laid off it this year. So I mean, the power has just been huge, and he's been carrying them in recent weeks, and just seems like he has a really good head on his shoulders and a complete game recently.
So we could be looking at 25-25 season from Rafaela next year is kind of where I got from all that. So very, very exciting player. He would be my favorite Red Sox too if I was watching as much of him as you guys do. Why don't you guys let Bob, you can go first. Why don't you guys let everyone know where they can follow you and keep up with your great work?
Yeah. So first off, thanks for having us on. This was great. You can follow me on Twitter at BobOsgood15. We have the Red Seat podcast that you can find on Apple and Spotify with Jake and myself and Eric Cross and Keaton DeRocher. So we record once a week. And I also write at Over the Monster, which is a SB Nation site for the Red Sox. So Bob Osgood15 on Twitter.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at DevJake, and you can find the Red Seat Podcast on Twitter at Red Seat Podcast. So definitely give us a follow there. Eric is posting a lot of really good stuff if you're a Red Sox fan, so check that out, guys.
Very good stuff from Bob and Jake talking Red Sox. Always love having you guys on. And then YouTube 15, if you want to check out those updated Dynasty rankings, they are live on the site. They are less than 2 hours old, so check those out. And thanks for listening to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast.